you love ball like I do, After Dark's a must listen.
It's where I go to get my hoops fix.
This is Field of 68 After Dark.
All right, welcome in. It is the Field of 68 After Dark. Chris Childers live here on SiriusXM. We are also live on YouTube all over the web. Matt McCall and John Henson alongside. It's February 13th. It is a love in the air kind of time. Valentine's tomorrow. Look at my boy Henson.
Look at that shirt, Henson.
What a romantic he is. Henson, turn your microphone on, my friend. We can't hear a word that you're saying. What are you doing over there?
I was gonna put in the chat instead of toast of the night, maybe rose of the night, switch it up a little bit, but we'll keep it with the toast. You know what I mean?
Look at him. He is a romantic and then some, our boy John Henson. I like that. Well, we'll tie in a little love throughout the night, because certainly love was in the air. If you were watching the Big Ten tonight, Nebraska and Maryland put on a show. Wasn't the busiest night of college basketball, guys. It's February 13th. We're a couple weeks away from March, so we know what's coming. We know we're going to have days that are filled top to bottom with basketball. But tonight, little ho-humish, but an important game with two teams trying to get into the NCAA tournament. Both teams right now on the good side of it. Maryland and Nebraska. The big question with Maryland all year was them winning on the road. Can this team win on the road? Can they be successful when they're not in Annapolis? And I think or College Park rather, and they proved that tonight, winning at Pinnacle Bank, 83-75, close game. Nebraska down as much as 11. They fought, they scratched, they clawed. At the end of the game, Derek Queen and company did enough to put them away by 8 points and won somewhat handily. Queen finishes 24 points, 11 rebounds. John Henson, a nice win for Maryland, and now they've collected a few of them on the road. They've got a win against Indiana on the road. They've beaten Illinois on the road. Now they've won at Nebraska. So, after the Ohio State game when they were ranked and everybody was like, here we go again with Maryland, and they can't win on the road, this was a nice response against Nebraska, John.
Yeah, Nebraska, they had a couple guys that weren't feeling well. And, I think Nebraska played about as well as they could have, especially in that second half. And Maryland just kept coming. They kept taking those punches and making big plays towards the end. I just love how they play. They apply that pressure, as we would say. They offensively, obviously, they're super gifted. And defensively, they get after you. Reese was chirping. The big fella, the freshman, was chirping. So, hey, you got to be a little feisty on the road. You got to tech. But, I think now for Maryland, the doubt of winning on the road has subsided. Now it's how can you handle prosperity, right? Last time we sang their praises, they kind of took a little slump, right? So you got a home game versus Iowa, USC. Then you got a big time game against Michigan State. I'm interested to see how they respond now that they've won, a fairly big game, quad winning game. I saw they were predicted a 7 seed. That's probably the best 7 seed in the country if they're going to be a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. But I love what I saw tonight, man. Just overall, just a hard fought, gutsy, just one of those road wins when you get back on the plane, you sit back and you really enjoy it, and it's a team building win. I think they're going to improve from here, and they're hitting their stride.
They're absolutely hitting their stride, and I think the Rutgers game at home came at a good time. It was a weekend game, big crowd, kind of a get-right kind of environment after losing to Ohio State in the midweek, and they took care of business tonight on the road. Now, if you look at Maryland's road moving forward, they have Iowa and USC and Michigan State all coming up at home. So definitely some resume-building opportunities in their home gym. And, Matt, we know how good they are when they're at home.
Yeah, Childers, I think too, look, this team is 11th in the country in total offense and 32 in total defense. That's a recipe for a lot of wins. And as a coach, you were always trying to say, okay, in terms of offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency, can we be in the top 30? Well, they're trending right there in terms of defensive, like one of the best defensive teams in the country, and they're already there in offense. And last year, their offense was atrocious, and they've completely flipped the script on that. Like, this team is for real. And when you get to this point in time in the season, it's all about, especially when you're playing on on the road, find a way to win the game. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Find a way to win the game. And that's what they did today. You can escape out of there with a half a point win. It does not matter. Just find a way to win. And that's exactly what they did today. But this is a team, the way they're built, the way they're playing on both ends of the floor, and how battle tested they're going to be because of the Big Ten. I mean, this is a team that could make, definitely a second weekend appearance in the NCAA tournament, but I would not be shocked if this team can get to the Final Four. They've got an outstanding coach in Coach Willard. He's kind of righted the ship here at Maryland, especially coming off of last season when they were so bad on the offensive end of the floor. I mean, this team's for real. I mean, this is a really, really good basketball team, and the numbers, show that. But the fact that look, find a way to win, no matter what, especially on the road. We're in the dog days right now, and Henson knows that. When you get to the middle of February, it's the dog days, and practice seems like a complete grind. Can you go on the practice floor? How long can you stay out there on the practice floor? I mean, it seems like games are coming nonstop, and the teams that find a way to win championships are the teams that find a way to win on the road at this time of the year.
All right, let's dig a little bit deeper into that because I find it interesting. And John, you can kind of give perspective as a player. And Matt, certainly, I mean, you were a head coach. You were on championship teams as an assistant. You've seen. So you talk about this time of the year, it's the dog days, but you got to find ways to win. And if you look at Maryland, I mean, Nebraska was right there in the last couple of minutes. They kept scratching, kept clawing. Maryland found a way, and they kind of hit that accelerator, that little boost button, if you will. If you think about a video game when you can kind of hit turbo when you're driving that car, when you're at like Chuck E. Cheese or whatever, and you can hit the turbo button, they kind of did that at the end. Now, let me ask you this, because I think there's great teams that do that. They can be in these tight games against maybe lesser teams or teams that are equal, and they find a way to kind of hit that turbo boost at the end. And you know what I'm talking about. John, you had Carolina teams that would do that at the end of games. Close game, you kind of pull away. What happens? Is it just a moment in time where you're like, listen, we're not going to lose this game? Is there a conversation that happens? Take me inside the player mentality when you realize you just, as Matt said, you just got to find a way to win.
Yeah, I think it starts with your guards. Those guards made some big time plays, big time finishes down the stretch. Never a rattle. Miguel hits the floater to kind of ice the game, which kind of we haven't even really talked about. But he misses that, right? Nebraska has a chance to tie, and we may not be sitting here saying Maryland won. So they just got two or three guards that are just, I mean, they're dogs and they're fearless. And when you have that type of guard play, it just instills confidence in the whole team. And then you've got the big fella Queen down there who's 24-10, playing like a third-year guy. I mean, he is a pro if I've ever seen one. Just a savviness, how he puts the ball off the glass, the pass across court to get the final shot for Miguel. They talked about it on TV. They said they might have a top 5 starting 5 in the country. And I tend to believe that the bench is the issue, right? Nobody really played, had 0 points off the bench. But as far as down the stretch, a starting 5 that I would want to have when the game was on the line, I mean, Maryland is up there with the Auburns and the Dukes and those type of teams with that type of talent.
Matt, it's 100%. I agree with what John just said. And going back to, Bruce Pearl's got a team like that. Nate Oates has a team like that, which is going to be fun to see them square up this weekend. But going back to what we saw with Maryland, what are your little hand gestures? What is that? 2 versus 1?
1 versus 2. 1 versus 2. That's what everybody wanted this weekend. That's what we got. We got 1 versus 2.
And we
That's
got
what
it.
we want. Yeah.
I'm still like, it's still, you see my hat right now, right? Like I cover a lot of college
Roll
football
Tide.
in my career.
There you go. Yeah.
Roll Tide.
We know. Yeah.
But I've spent so much time in this state, and it's all about that oblong spheroid sport. They like that pigskin. The fact that this is the epicenter of college basketball this weekend in the middle of
This is
February
amazing.
blows my mind. And you know it too. You were in this league, dude. Like, it's just, what the hell? I know we're going to talk more about it later. We're going to talk more about it later in the show. But my God, it's insane. So go back as a coach. So I asked John, as a player, when you kind of hit that turbo button, there's certain teams that have that ability. You know, that Joakim Noah, Torian Green, you know, that Lee Humphrey team had that ability. Can you coach it? Is it just there with those guys?
Yeah, you know, and even more recently when I was at Florida in 2014, Scotty Wilbekin, Patrick Young, Will You Get, Casey Prather, like
Mhm.
that team, Michael Frazier, you know, I mean, we went 18-0 in the SEC. And there's something
Yeah.
about the dialogue when you're in the timeout. When you're in the timeout and your players are talking in the timeout, and the head coach doesn't have to come in the timeout and talk about anything because the players are on the same page, talking about things like, we need to stop. We need to stop right now. We're getting this stop. Doesn't matter. We're getting this stop. When the head coach is in the timeout or the coaching staff's in the timeout and they're running the timeout and the players have no dialogue amongst each other before you even get to the timeout, now you got a problem. Now you got a problem. But when your players are running that and you have leaders on your team that understand what's at stake in that timeout, that's when you know, hey, look, this team's going to push through. This team's going to win this game. No matter, no doubt about it. You know, my team at Chattanooga, we were able to win 29 games. I mean, it was Trey McClain, Justin Toyo, Eric Robertson, Greg Pryor. Like, those guys in that timeout were running the time. They were talking before I even had to get there. And all of a sudden, by the time I got to the timeout, it's like, okay, here's a little ball play to run on underneath out of bounds, you know, situation. Go out there, execute it, and that's exactly what they did. I mean, that's when you have leaders and you have a team that believes they're going to win. That's when you know. I mean, that's when you know. And then your practices, that you don't have to go in there and be in there for 2.5 hours and, you know, try to pull something out of these guys. You have to try to pull it
So
out of them. No, they have it.
So do you think Kevin Willard is feeling that right now? Like, with Derek Queen getting older every single day, understanding college basketball every single day. I mean, it felt like they had that coming out of that timeout at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I think Henson's exactly right with this team. I mean, in terms of their starting five, the biggest issue is the production coming off the bench. Like, you got to have something coming off the bench to make a deep run in March. Like, you have to have something. And I'll go back to that 2014 Final Four team I was a part of. I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith, who's starting for the LA Lakers. I mean, he was coming off the bench. Casey Hill, McDonald's All-American, coming off the bench. You know, he had 11 assists in the Sweet 16 game against UCLA as a freshman. So that would be the concern for this group. But the starting five is as good as any starting five in college basketball. But they've got to find somebody to be able to go to. Foul trouble, turned ankle, some sickness, something. I mean, they've got to find somebody else to be able to go to.
100%. So if all holds up, they have a chance, but we can't have anything go awry because depth might be a concern. All right, so the other top 25 game tonight, Memphis was in action. They won their 7th in a row. Is it 8 in a row now? They beat South Florida, beat them on the road, 80-65. They had a nice lead at halftime, 42-27. Really never looked back. USF kind of chipped away a little bit in the second half. End of the day, 15-point win for Penny's team. They're hot. They've changed their culture. They've changed their attitude. They're playing really good basketball. John, how good do you think Memphis is right now? And what did you think of their really, kind of clinical win tonight over USF?
You know, they're down here in Tampa. It's beautiful. Down here, the weather's great. So,
Yeah.
I know they were feeling good walking into the gym.
Did you pull up? Were you at the game? No,
I wasn't at the game. I went to a little dinner. That's why I got my chain on, my watch, man. I went to a little dinner. So,
Nice.
But, they're really good. And I always joke, like, as long as they're underdogs, they're going to be fine. But I don't think that's going to be the case come tournament season. They're going to have to play as favorites, and they're going to have to play with the target on their backs. And they've handled the conference well this year. You know, you worry about a team like Memphis who can run through their conference and have some slip-ups. They have not done that. I mean, I looked it up today. I think like 99% of the bet in the handle was on Memphis to cover. So they're handling prosperity well, and you know, they just need to get through this conference season healthy and need to grow and not build bad habits playing against lesser opponents. And you know, they've got a potential to make a run in March, as we saw in Maui, what they can do when they really get rolling.
Man, it looks like Penny's actually having fun. I mean, you know, watching him tonight on TV, it seemed like the guys are fully bought in. Like this team is, you know, wanting to play team basketball, wanting to listen to their coach. I know we live in an era where, you know, sometimes guys just want to throw the ball out there and not get coached very hard, or they're going to transfer. This feels a little different, and it feels like the culture has kind of really taken root. And I mean, I don't know. I watching tonight, it seemed like Penny was having fun.
First of all, Penny's a good coach.
Yeah, he's
And
great.
I remember watching him when he was coaching in the Peach Jam, and like this guy, he knows exactly what he's doing and what he's running on offense and how they're playing on offense and the floor spacing. But when he fired his entire staff, you know, back in September, you know, whenever it was, I don't remember the exact date, but when he got rid of assistant coaches, that's an aggressive move to make. But something had to be going on. Something had to be going on for him to be able to do that. And we were all sitting here scratching our heads saying, "Oh man, this doesn't look good. Perception, this is bad. Why is he doing this? How is this going to work?" And he did it for a reason, because something was off. And Childish, you just said it. Like he looks like he's having fun. And before that, and maybe there was something wrong or something going on within his coaching staff. If your coaching staff is not connected, if the people that when you lose a game, you go up in your office as the head coach, you go up there and you don't feel this welcomeness of, hey, we're in this thing together. When we win, we're in it together. When we lose, we're in it together. And I want to be around these guys every single day. If you don't have that, your players are going to see it. They're going to see it, and you have no chance. You have zero chance of winning. If you don't have a connected coaching staff that has your back as a head coach, you cannot win. So if you need to make an aggressive move, a bold move, especially right before the season starts, you have to do it. And that's what he did. And look, I understand that the league's down and this is not a great conference, but to be at 21-4, 11-1 in the league, I don't care which league you're in. I mean, that's some good coaching. And for him to make that move when he did it for a reason. He didn't do it because he's trying to lose. No coach wants to go out there and lose games. He did it because there was something off, and it was the right move for him to make at that point in time.
What? Okay. Yeah, obviously, right? I mean, I think it's clear that the results are proving that was the right move. You got to give me a little bit more depth, though, because you've been a head coach. What the hell could have been going on?
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Coach, regardless of what's going on, would you have the panache to fire your whole staff right before the season, or would you try to work it out? Like, would you do that as a coach?
Exactly, right? Like, that's crazy.
First of all, I didn't have the career that Penny had. All right, so let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it a buck. Like I didn't have the little Penny. I didn't have Tyra Banks. I didn't have the commercials. I didn't have any of that. Okay, so let's keep it a buck.
You should have, McCall.
I mean, that was an aggressive move. But I'm just telling you, speaking from experience, if there is one thing off on your staff, and you go down in that locker room and you try to talk to your team and you say, we're in this together. We've got to be a connected together unit. We got to go out there and play. They're going to see through that shit, and they're going to say, you're fake. You're not real. You're not authentic. Why am I going to listen to you when I know the guys upstairs aren't getting along? So why are we going out here and playing like a connected unit like you're telling us to when I know you guys upstairs aren't a connected unit? And maybe that's what he felt. And he's like, you know what? This is an important year for him. This is an
Yeah, it
important year for
is.
him as a head coach. And he made the move and he made the decision to do that. And it is paying off. And I have no inside information on anything that happened or within that coaching staff. All I know is if your coaching staff is not connected, the players will see through it and they will think you are full of shit.
Sure. But John, I think you're with me. Like, it feels a little weird that, okay, right before the season, you have a group of guys that you hired, that you handpicked to be your assistant coaches, that you said this is off. Now I'm going to go get a bunch of new guys. And it's not like at that time of the year you're picking from, a big pool of dudes. I mean, it's right before the year. And somehow, some way, you're able to get it connected to the point where it looks like it does now. I mean, doesn't that feel like a miracle? Like the basketball gods are raining down sunshine and roses on Penny?
From my experience, especially at the professional level, obviously not college, not at UNC, but sometimes you get in there as a head coach and there's guys plotting against you. There's guys, hoping on your downfall on your staff and going back door to the administration. And I've seen that in the NBA a lot, right? Like I've been on the team, won't name the team, but we used to go to one of the assistants like, yo, like, what's going on? He'd be like, just listen to him. And he would just sit there and let stuff just go wrong because he knew that he was the next guy in line.
Really?
If stuff did happen. So, if there was that type of ascension in the staff and that type of stuff going on, he's got to. If he doesn't fire the staff, Memphis is not where they're at, and everybody's fired, right? So, it's a gutsy call, but now he looks like a genius, right? Like everybody's singing their praises and I remember in our After Dark chat when he let go of all the coaching staff. I mean, they were hammering Penny in there, right? Like, what is he doing? Hey, like the things got out of control in Memphis.
This is it. Yeah.
Now it's quiet.
Hot seat.
Real quiet.
Yeah.
Real quiet. Only guy that's been day one is John Martin. Shout out John Martin, man.
Shout out to John Martin. Not John Fanta. Not John Fanta. Yeah. John Martin. We gotta make sure we get that right.
Don't get it to John Martin,
not John Fanta.
One of the great moments in radio history recently between Martin and Fanta, no doubt about it. McCall, you were doing one of these things, like clearly. So, okay, how much bullshit goes on behind the scenes within staffs? Because I gotta believe, like when you hire a staff, you think these guys got your back, right? At least you hope.
Yeah, I mean, you hope they do, but you don't always know. And that's why you hear head coaches all the time say, hey, I'm only hiring guys that I know. I am only hiring guys that I know. Like my coaching staff, I'm putting around me guys that I've worked with or guys that I'm really, really close to that have worked with them. Because, look, ego is the enemy. It's a great book. Read it. Pick it up. It's unbelievable. I mean, and that's what it is. And, you get coaches that are assistant coaches that are constantly trying to flex their muscles or try to be the guy or trying to, put themselves out there to be the next guy when the ultimate goal is the program winning. That's all that matters. And the ultimate goal is to serve your head coach. Serve your head coach the best way. I got my opportunity to become a head coach because I was at the University of Florida working for who I think is one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. I sometimes feel like he's wasting his talent with the roster that he's coaching right now with the Chicago Bulls because he just had this unbelievable ability to impact people and put people around him that all that mattered was the program. It was never about him. It was only about the program. That's all that mattered, the program and the university. And that's what assistant coaches have to understand. Like it's not about you. It's not about, you making a name for yourself. It's about the program winning. And like, if I'm trying to get the next job, no, don't try to get the next job. Do a great job at the job you have, and the next job will come. That's all that matters. Nothing else matters. And I would say this to young coaches. I say it to young coaches. Like, I didn't become a head coach or get an opportunity to become a head coach because I was the greatest recruiter in the world or individual instruction guy or scouter. I got an opportunity to become a head coach because I was serving the University of Florida under Billy Donovan and we were winning games. That's how I became a head coach. Had nothing to do with anything else other than that. And that's what people have to understand. When you try to cut a guy's legs from underneath them or you're hoping that they fail so maybe you get an opportunity, or you hope maybe that a coach gets fired in the middle of the season so you're going to be the interim head coach to be able to show I can do this. It's the wrong way to go about it. It just is. And he made a decision to make moves on his staff because he knew his back was against the wall and maybe these guys didn't have his back.
Yeah.
And he had the guts to do it. And that's, look, it's paying off.
Big guts. And they looked good tonight. 80-65. They win over USF. Let's take a break. We'll come back. 2 weeks left to go in the month of February. Let's talk Coach of the Year as we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, getting close to March. We'll do that next, right around the corner, as both ranked teams won tonight that were in action. Chris Childers, Matt McCall, John Henson. More after the break on the Field of 68 After Dark.
College basketball fans, are you ready to take your hoops game to a new level? Whether you're a seasoned bettor or just trying to win your March Madness office pool, Rhythm is here to give you the edge this season. With data-driven predictions for every single college basketball game left on the schedule, Rhythm helps you maximize your bets. And as March Madness kicks off, Rhythm's insights will help you spot those plucky Cinderellas that you know are going to shake up the NCAA tournament. But that's not all. When Selection Sunday rolls around, let Rhythm's AI-powered bracket generator do the heavy lifting for you. This is the same AI tool that performed 35% better than the average ESPN bracket last year. And here's the best part. Rhythm pairs perfectly with our Field of 68 expert analysis, giving you the 1-2 punch that you need for the rest of the college basketball season. So don't wait. Download Rhythm today and get ready to see college basketball and your betting results in a whole new light.
All right, we're back here on the Field of 68 After Dark on this Thursday. Chris Childers with Matt McCall, the coach, and the big guy, John Henson. Let's continue our conversation tonight. Not the busiest night in basketball. We got into Maryland and Memphis, a couple of top 25 teams with W's tonight. But let's get into the big picture. There's a couple weeks left to go. The conference tournaments are going to be here before we know it, which are going to be kind of wild in their own right. They always are, but this year we have a different looking Big Ten. We have a different looking Big 12 and an SEC. So those conference tournaments are certainly going to have a different kind of vibe than ever before, as will the NCAA tournament, because these teams certainly had much different roads to get to the Field of 68 than ever before. With that said, you look at some of the coaching jobs right now, and let's take a look around at Coach of the Year with a couple weeks left to go. When you just look at the best guy, the guy that's been the most impressive, the guy that should win the Coach of the Year, Matt McCall, I know you and I have talked about Todd Golden in the past and the fact that Florida's had so much success, the fact that, there was a lot of off-the-court stuff. Had it not been for that, a lot of people might consider him for Coach of the Year. Maybe they still do because he's been cleared and he's still coaching. But in your opinion right now, as we're heading into Valentine's Day tomorrow, which means we're right there middle of February, who is your Coach of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely in the conversation. There's no question about it. To see where that program is and, the wins, coming out of the Tennessee loss, to be able to perform and play like they did against Auburn on the road in that type of environment in the jungle. And it's like, okay, they played on Saturday. Now they're going to turn around and play against a pesky, Mississippi State team. And they on the road and they found a way to win that game. But I don't think we're talking enough about Dusty May. I mean, 19-5 overall. And you look where this program was. They fired one of their own. We're talking about one of the greatest players that ever played at the University of Michigan. And the program was in a little bit of shambles last year. The Dougie McDaniel suspension. He was only suspended for road games. He could play in home games and not play on the road. They won 8 games. They were not in a good place. And you talk about turnarounds and flips, and I would say Pat Kelsey's in the same mix, but Dusty May right now is a tie for first place in the Big Ten. To me, the job that he's done changing the trajectory of that program from last year to this year, bringing in the right guys, bringing in the right transfers. I mean, you can make a case that Danny Wolf's the best power forward in the entire country. Vlad Golden got off to a rough start in his tenure there at Michigan, has completely turned that around and is playing like one of the best front court players in the entire country. I think the job that Dusty's doing, he's got to be in the category. I mean, 19-5 overall, 11-2 in the league, in the second best league in the conference. I think that's where I would lean towards right now.
Well, he's just proven that he's just an elite coach. I mean, what he did at Florida Atlantic was mind-blowing. I mean, that's a program that I've been around. I went to a Conference USA school, and I know all too well about their facilities and their history and their lack thereof. And the fact that he went in there and took that team to the Final Four was a modern-day miracle. And, to take over Michigan and take over for a guy that's as big of a brand name and a part of the history and lore as anybody ever has been with the program, I think is remarkable. So I don't disagree that Dusty May should be right up there.
And Childish, the turnaround from one year to the next, like it's
Sure.
year one. And year one, whatever job you take is difficult. I don't care. I don't care if you take over a good situation. I don't care if you take over a difficult situation. Year one is hard because you're trying to figure out the place. And especially with the year that they had last year to what they're doing now. That's why, I'm looking at the turnaround where it's like from one year to the next, who's doing the best job. That's to me a national coach of the year.
Yeah, and you mentioned Pat Kelsey. Certainly in that conversation, Louisville was horrid before he got there. John, how about you? Who's your national coach of the year right now?
I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna go Bruce Pearl. You got the best team in the best league, arguably the best league kind of lineup ever, right? Of teams like in that league. I mean, they could get potential 13 teams into the tournament. So I don't know when the voting is, but if Bruce Pearl can kind of keep Auburn at the top, there's a big game Saturday, obviously, and they can win the SEC. We've got to. I feel like you got to give it to them. They're just that good, and the coaching job that he's done lately over the last few years, I think it's time. I want to say he won it a couple of years back, if I can't remember, but I think Bruce Pearl's a coach of the year if we're just talking about winning right at a high level. And then I would say maybe a guy that's underrated. I mean, we talked about it earlier. I think Penny, the job Penny's doing,
hold
he's
on
a little
to that.
underrated.
All right,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Give me your underrated.
You
Go
go to the
ahead.
next question.
It's the next segment. Oh, I thought we were doing both. Okay, yeah, no. So I'm going Bruce Pearl, and then I like what Patino's doing as well. I mean, they were not in the top 25. Now they're a potential top 10 team sitting at the top of the Big East. So, Patino's doing a great job as well.
Rick Pitino has completely kind of changed the swag of the Northeast of college basketball. Yeah. It reminds me of when I was a kid. I mean, when I was a kid and the Northeast had that grit, and you had, St. John's and Georgetown and, all these beautiful, Catholic private school programs. We lost that for a long time. St. John's was average as the day is long. I mean, Georgetown's been in the abyss for a while. The fact that Pitino has made college basketball for the home team in Madison Square Garden that sexy again, and now we're looking at the Johnnies as a team that, we think can get to the second weekend and maybe beyond, that's pretty cool. So I think Pitino's got to be in the mix as well. But here's what I'll say about Bruce Pearl. And I would say Bruce Pearl as well, and I know it's the obvious one because they've been number one. But, they were preseason outside of the top 10. I think they were 11 in the AP poll. So they've been a little better than people thought. But here's what's always amazing to me. I kind of think of the totality of it. And the fact that we have number one versus number two this weekend. And that game is so big. And I bet your ratings are going to be enormous. The city of Birmingham, here's what's wild. It rates the highest in the country for college football ratings, period. As far as city, per capita and all that stuff, population size, I promise you that basketball game is going to rate right up there with any Alabama or Auburn football game all season long. I promise you that. That's what Bruce and that's what Nate Oates have done, making basketball matter in the state of Alabama. But here's the wild thing about it. You know, I work for SiriusXM, and Bruce Pearl and I used to do shows together, like after the games like this, like an after dark kind of show. And I remember specifically, we were doing a show, and he said to me, he said, Jay Jacobs called. And Jay was the athletic director at Auburn at the time. And he said, Jay is interested. And at that time, remember, Bruce had a show cause. Bruce was out, had the Aaron Kraft barbecue, which looks ridiculous, you know, with nowadays in the NIL and all that stuff. But that got him kicked out of college basketball. He was doing radio and TV for a little while, which is crazy to think. But, you know, the Auburn job, Bruce was not, he had baggage. So the Auburn job, when he took it, I mean, Bruce Pearl almost got Tennessee to the Final Four. He was within a little layup of Ohio State. Remember, in the Elite Eight, they were right there. This guy kind of gets fired in disgrace. He asked me, he's like, can I win at Auburn? And I'm sure he asked everybody that he ever met if he could win there because, you know, and I said, you're Bruce Pearl. To me, he's P.T. Barnum. He's the kind of guy that not only is he a great coach, but he can push all the other buttons that are going to make that program that much bigger. You know, before the jungle became the jungle, he was in the crowd. You know, he's the guy that takes off his shirt and paints it and, you know, does all these things in a very genuine way. He gives the personal touch where when he's around you, you kind of are like, is this guy BS? He's not. And I think that's what's so incredible. And you see what he's done. I mean, what's so wild about it? Bruce Pearl, whether you agree with his opinions or not, I don't see a basketball coach that's more, you know, outspoken about what he believes than Bruce Pearl. And with that said, it seems like, you know, it kind of people feed off of it in the area, and the basketball team seems to as well. Jani Broome has been on that team for a long time. You know, he's been going to SEC Media Days now for seemingly, it feels like a decade. You know what I mean? Like, they got old. He's added good parts. They've got a good NIL. What he has built blows my mind. The fact that we have 1 versus 2 this weekend blows my mind. So it's almost like a career thing, but what Bruce has done, I got to give him Coach of the Year.
Is your boy going to be at the game?
Which boy?
Nick Saban. Will he make an appearance? Is Saban
You
coming?
got to believe he's
coming
going to be there. You got to believe that he will. Yeah.
The GOAT will be in the building. The GOAT will be in the building.
I mean, you know, he's actually, from what I'm told, isn't he hanging out in Jupiter and stuff lately? Like, isn't he around you?
Yeah, he's not too far down the road. He's not too far down the road. He lives in a different tax bracket than I live in, but he's not.
Well,
he's on the same island as Tiger Woods, Celine Dion, everybody. He's over there. He's on that side. Yeah, we're not on that side. We're not on that level.
Listen, I used to always tell the guys, I said, look, man, you don't got to have the biggest house, but you could be in the same neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So you know, yeah. Hey, you close enough, McCall. You close enough.
Close enough. You're better than where I live. I mean, I'll tell you that right now. Look around. You got palm trees, and I got not palm trees. I'll tell you that. So how about underrated Coach of the Year? I mean, we heard John's response. Matt, is there somebody for you that kind of, you know, pops out of a guy that's done maybe an undervalued job?
So when I think underrated, my mind immediately goes to like mid-major. And there's a guy right now at the mid-major ranks that all these high major jobs that are open, and I'm not trying to pluck them from the Atlantic 10, but Tony Skinn at George Mason, he's got his team in first place. No one was thinking George Mason was going to win the Atlantic 10 right now. Nobody was picking them to win the Atlantic 10. And the way that his team embodies how he was as a player. You know, when you think back at that Final Four run that Mason had in 2006, just this tough, gritty team that finds a way to win. That's what we were talking about earlier. Your team just finding ways to win. That's what his team does. And they've been in close games in the A-10, but he's underrated. And there's a bunch of high major schools, I'm sure, that are kind of keeping the tabs on how does this season end for the Patriots up at George Mason. But there's two other guys that jump out to me. Kevin Willard at Maryland, 16-17 last year. And offensively, I talked about it earlier, it wasn't great last season. To see the way that they're performing, the one tonight, big win tonight on the road, how they got that one and how they're performing all season. And then Dennis Gates, Missouri, they didn't win a game in the SEC last year. So you talk about a turnaround from one year to the next. They didn't win a game. From not winning a game in the SEC to being ranked in the top 25, that's a turnaround. That's coaching. That's evaluating your roster and your team from one year to the next, saying, you know what, we're not good enough. We're not good enough. Making difficult decisions. Maybe it's on your staff, but maybe it's within your team. Telling someone that, you recruited to come into your program, say, this is not the right fit. You need to find a place that's a better fit for you because it's not a good fit for us. I think that's, when you think about coaches that are underrated, that's amazing to see what Dennis Gates has done from last year to this season.
Yeah, I along the same lines. I stay in the same league because Vanderbilt was god awful a year ago, and Jerry Stackhouse roster wasn't competitive. I go Mark Byington. It's kind of weird to say considering they've lost 3 of their last 4 that I'm patting this guy on the back, but I think the overall body of work. We've seen them beat Tennessee at home. We've seen them beat Kentucky at home. They've gotten some quality wins. Jason Edwards and AJ Hoggard. These guys it's a good backcourt that he's got. I think for them to, right now, I think they're right squarely on the bubble, but a year ago they were in the abyss. So I think for them to, I think if you're a Vanderbilt fan, you can clearly say that you believe that they got the hire right, that there is, certainly a great momentum moving forward, that people can look at this and invest their nickels and dimes in the NIL and the Vanderbilt collective, that this guy is going to have the stuff to take the program forward in a league that's ultra competitive. I think he's proven that this year. So for me, we've seen the James Madison coaches, football, Signetti and Byington in Vanderbilt, kind of work a little magic. And I think if Vandy makes the tournament, it's going to be a remarkable story and will definitely go under the radar. I don't think, a lot of people are going to pay it much mind. But living, I live a couple miles from the stadium, I can't help but ignore what he's done. So Mark Byington would be my underrated coach. John, you said it was who? Did you say it was Memphis or?
Yeah, I'm going to go Penny just because of all the turmoil we talked about, right? Season before, people were kind of like off him a little bit. New staff, bringing in Nolan Smith and Mike Davis from Indiana, just getting that staff together as one, to get your team together as one. And, their record, yeah, they're in a weaker conference, but we saw what they did out of conference. So we know they are for real. And so I got to go underrated job, probably Penny, because people were ready to have the pickets and the feathers and the tar for him, had Memphis not done well this year.
They were absolutely ready to kick his ass out of there. And
he was on the Jeff Goodman hot seat before the hot seat even was created. Goodman had him on the hot seat before it even started. The great Jeff Goodman, right? He was ready to just kick that guy to the curb. I think he may have even put a for sale sign in his front yard. I think that may have even happened. That was what was coming.
Things. Remember the old popcorn thing you put on the stove and you'd have to shake it, for it to get. That's what Goodman was doing to Penny at the beginning of the 100%. Year. That stovetop, trying to get that thing. But he's give him credit. And I know Goodman would give him credit, no doubt. Let's break.
100%.
He would. Let's take a break. We'll come back. Let's take a look at the weekend. We have a loaded schedule coming up, including the big one in Bama. We'll talk about it next. Childers, Henson, and McCall on the field of 68 after dark.
There is no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that. Would you be surprised to find out that the Field of 68 is home to more than 35 podcasts, more than 20 25 team-specific podcasts that are hosted by the people that know what fans want the most. The Goodman and Humble podcast, the DTF podcast, the A10 Insider podcast, and the Mountain West podcast. But wait, there's even more. The Field of 68 will be launching the ACC Insider podcast this year. Subscribe to this channel and come along for the ride. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for the season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today.
All right, back here, Field of 68 after dark on this Thursday. Chris Childers, John Henson, and the fantastic Mr. Matt McCall. A lot of basketball this weekend. It is going to be sexy when you look at the schedule. Certainly, Alabama and Auburn in the SEC gets top billing. It's number 1 versus number 2. It's a state that is steeped in football tradition. They're not used to a game of this magnitude in February in basketball, but here we are, and they've embraced it like nobody else. Believe me, it is a big deal, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But let's start previewing some of the action beginning tomorrow night at Assembly Hall, one of the great venues in college basketball. The home team, though, hasn't played like they play in one of the great venues for a long time. It's been over a decade that Indiana's kind of been just average to above average as a program. They've been anything but elite. Tomorrow they play UCLA. UCLA's been really hot. I know they're coming off a loss, but before that they won like 6-7 in a row. Indiana has struggled. Mike Woodson said he was going to retire at the end of the year, John, but lo and behold, they went on the road and beat Michigan State the other day. So they got a little juju. Will it continue tomorrow against a good UCLA team, sir?
I think it will. Indiana's playing with no pressure. Their coach said they're going to step down. Everyone thinks they suck. So they're loose. And a loose, talented team is dangerous, as we saw last game, right? So I like Indiana. I'm just going to, I like Indiana. Everybody, I mean, I don't know the speech coach gave them, but I'm pretty sure I had to say it was something like, we have nothing to lose. Everybody thinks that we aren't any good. And they showed that when they are playing at a high level, this is the type of stuff they can do and the type of wins they can, accumulate. So, and UCLA's got to fly from LA across the country, time zone difference, all that good stuff. I like Indiana in this spot.
McCall, how do you feel about the matchup tomorrow in Bloomington? John says they're loose, but should it have come to that? Mike Woodson having to say, I'm going away, for this team to actually kind of, loosen their tie a little bit?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation for Mike Woodson. It's a difficult situation for his staff. I was told on March 1st, 2022, that I would no longer be the head coach at the University of Massachusetts. And we had 3 games left to play. We had it was senior night the next night on a Wednesday night. Then it was at George Mason, and then it was the conference tournament. And, deciding to coach the rest of the season. And this is a little bit of a different deal because Mike Woodson has said he would resign with all the noise that's around your program. But there is a looseness of the basket kind of opening up, and how he's approaching this season, the rest of the season, I have no idea. But, the pressure is kind of off. And, the message when I was going through that is, hey, let's just try to enjoy this. Let's try to enjoy, the next couple of weeks that we have with each other, and let the chips fall where they may. I don't know if that's what he's saying, but that's what it looked like against Michigan State. Let's just go out there and have some fun. Your coaching staff not screaming and yelling in practice and trying to demand things, like alleviate that and just go try to find some joy in coaching over the next couple months, because that's at the end of the day, that's going to be it. Now, if they go on an absolute run and a heater, and now the administration is going to have to make a decision on whether or not he is going to resign, because he may come back and say, I'm not going to resign if they continue to play at a high level. But, trying to find that joy and trying to just have some fun, over these next, couple months for him and for this program. And that makes them a dangerous team. That makes them dangerous because that basket opens up and the players will play a little bit looser and, go out there and cut it loose. But this UCLA team, look, they're they lost by 5 at Illinois. They've stayed in the Midwest, I'm sure. I'm sure they didn't fly back all the way out to California. I'm sure they've been there and getting prepared for this one. I'd like to get Henson's take too, just on the Friday night tilt. It's not Saturday college basketball. We get the Friday night game. Would you want to play on Friday night, Henson?
100%. We used to love when we get a little Friday night, Saturday early game, man, because get the weekend off. You're feeling good if you get a win. College kids, you know what time it is, coach. So a Friday night tilt in Bloomington, if we could get a big win against UCLA, I mean, they're for sure going to be off the next day. Mike Woodson is an NBA guy. They're for sure off. So this is a big time spot for them to have a good time this weekend too. Let's not remember they're college kids and they got a lot more money than we did. So, they might even, who knows, man, they might be able to go out, get a table, pop some bottles. I don't know. But, we were at the bar, but, it's just a different age now. So, maybe Umar Ballo's taking some of them M's and taking the guys out for a nice steak. And, so there's definitely something to a Friday night matchup, especially a big time matchup like that.
Think about this, though. Think about their schedule. Like if you look at, Indiana, like coming down the stretch, right? Like this is going to be a tough game. No question about it. Like this is Mick Cronin. He's got his team playing well. They're one of the more hotter teams in the country. But then they get Purdue at home, which will be a difficult game. Then they get Penn State at home. And then they stay out on the West Coast. They get Washington, Oregon, and then they get both those games on the road, and then Ohio State at home. Like there's some winnable games for Indiana coming down the stretch. Like there's some winnable games when you think about it. So it is going to be very interesting to see how the rest of this season plays out for the Indiana.
I know it was one win though. Let's hold on to our pantaloons over getting too excited after one game.
I'm just saying it could be very interesting.
I know. Let's get excited about.
We're talking about Indiana basketball here. We gotta do something for the people at home.
I know.
Yeah,
I get it.
On.
Well, I'm sure they're pissed that their program was wallowing in their own stink. And meanwhile, in the state of Alabama, 1 versus 2 is happening this weekend at Coleman in Tuscaloosa. Been a lot of great games in Tuscaloosa. Not so many basketball, a lot of football games. But McCall, it's home for the Tide. What's your vibe going into this thing?
Do they still in Coleman Coliseum right before the game? I remember as an assistant coach walking out there and they just like right before the game, like the Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah,
is that still a deal?
Yeah.
Is that still a deal? Okay, the crowd's going absolutely bonkers, going in there, a little Leonard Skinner, get the crowd fired up right before the tip. Look, this is going to be electric. And I mean, you were saying it today on your show on Sirius XM. And you were saying it, earlier tonight on Field of 68, just 1 versus 2 in the state of Alabama. And we're not talking about football. We're talking about college basketball. And you've got 2 of the best coaches in the country squaring off. If you're the Indiana Hoosiers and you have a job opening, probably the 2 of these guys need to be your first call. And I'm not saying either one would leave their respective schools. I'm not saying that at all. But when you look at what both of these guys are doing, they're 2 of the best coaches in the entire country squaring off in the state of Alabama. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. The pace of the game, how fast both these teams play. I think for Auburn, it's going to boil down to, can you take care of the basketball, not have live ball turnovers, and allow Alabama to get back out on the break and ignite this crowd? We know Janai Broom's going to show up and play extremely well, and he's a game changer just in terms of if the shot clock's winding down and the ball hits his hands, he can kick in a 3 from anywhere on the floor. But for them, like, I'd pay attention to the rebounding margin. Like when you're trying to win a game like this on the road, can you get to the free throw line more than the other team? Can you out rebound the other team? and take care of the basketball. But this is going to be electric. I'm waiting to see if the GOAT Nick Saban's in the building, which I'm sure he will be.
He'll be there. Yeah, I'm telling you. I guarantee you Nicky will be there. John, what's your vibe going into the game Saturday?
First of all, shout out basketball. Has there ever been a number 1 versus number 2 football matchup, Alabama-Auburn? Somebody got to research that.
No
I don't
chance.
think there's ever been.
I don't
There's
think so. Yeah, I doubt it.
So let's shout out to the hoops of the state of Alabama.
Heck yeah.
First 1 and 2 matchup in SEC history. Like, this is crazy stuff happening. This usually doesn't happen. So I'm excited to see. I think from a matchup perspective, I think the bigs neutralize each other. They both got very good, solid bigs, size down low. I think it's going to come down to the guards, and I love Auburn's guards. I really do. Alabama's going to have their handful. So is Auburn, but I'm going to have to lean Auburn on the road. They always seem to rise to the occasion, whether it's injuries. And as soon as you kind of doubt them, it's almost like you look up, they're up 10 points. I mean, look at their last few wins. It was kind of teetering. Towards the end, they just laid a hammer. Now they're up 12 points. It's no chance. So I'm going to lean Auburn, but I'm excited to see this on court. I mean, this is the type of stuff that gives you chills. Like, in my college career, when we played Duke, the ACC championship, right? Like, last game of the season, like, there's nothing like it. I got chills just talking about it. Like, so I'm excited for those players and excited for, America to just see that type of intensity, man. That's why we watch college basketball.
All right, boys, time for some quick toasts of the night. I'm going to go Maryland. Kevin Willard, they got themselves another critical road win against an NCAA tournament team. Derek Queen, he's big, beefy, and mighty. So toast to you, Kevin Willard. Johnny,
I'm going to go real quick. I'm going to go Derek Queen, 24-10, most double-doubles by a freshman, more than Cooper Flagg, more than Ace Bailey, number 1 and 2 picks. Somebody show my boy some love.
D Queen, oof. Matt McCall, take us home.
Give me Tony Pujol, North Alabama. Another win tonight for Coach Pujol, 18-8 on the year, 10-3 in the league. If you don't know Coach Pujol, he's one of the greatest guys in all of college basketball, great human being, worked for Anthony Grant for a number of years. Coach Pujol has this team rolling.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for listening to the Field 68.